Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So it's time to come back to Kashtira, the one of still, I think, the more feared decks of the format, just because Arise-Heart does tend to be a pretty annoying card to play against. But in terms of its overall impact on the meta, it's kind of been a little bit dubious, because while Kashtira is a deck that is very present in Master Duel and on Ranked Ladder, if you look at other kind of forms of play, I guess, like tournaments and Duelist Cup, the deck does not tend to put up the best results. Despite that, it is still a very widely played deck, and if you look at decks submitted on like Master Duel meta, for example, you'll still see that Kashtira is like far and away the most has like the most submissions, right? So it's interesting. It's interesting, this deck's spot in the meta. I don't think a lot of people want to hear this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I think Kashtira is like perfectly balanced as a deck as it is right now. And again, I don't think a lot of people want to hear that, because I think a lot of people really don't like facing against their Riseheart. They don't like having their stuff banished. They find it annoying, or their zones blocked, and they're like, how can a deck that blocks zones and banish everything possibly be balanced? Well, by the fact that it bricks a lot. Mostly due to the field spell and the prosperity both being at 1 copy each. Now, I will say that while I think Kashtira as a deck is balanced, I think that Kashtira Fenrir as a individual card is not. And this card, I think, needs to go to either 1 or 0, ideally, in my opinion, 0. Not because of the Kashtira deck, but because it is just too strong as an individual card. And yes, any future hits this card receives will also impact Kashtira as a deck overall, but I think that's relatively fine. I think it's even fine if Kashtira does get knocked down a little bit, maybe, from where it's at right now in terms of power level, but I think hitting Fenrir would be more than enough to do that. I don't think the deck necessarily needs any additional hits beyond that. I most notably think that Arise-Heart does not need to be hit, honestly. I think this card went to, what, 1 or 0, something like that in the TCG, and I don't think that's the hit for the deck. I think that Master Duel has definitely demonstrated to us very well that hitting consistency was absolutely the right call when it comes to Kashtira. So, in that regard, I do have a build here that's kind of trying to compensate on some of that consistency loss in the form of not only the Planet Pathfinder, but also the Pot of Desires. Although, I will say that I'm a bit dubious on Desires in particular. The Planet Pathfinder I was actually more dubious on when the deck first released, but as time has gone on, I've actually come to find that, yeah, it's actually a pretty good tool. The Wraitsoth is the card that definitely helps you out the most in terms of getting your plays going by searching the Unicorn, and it's not like we use our normal summon really anyway, so the Pathfinder ends up being fine. The Desires, however, like, I think 3 was absolutely too many. Like, there were so many duels where I had multiple copies and it just wasn't that great, or like drawing into another Desires, but also, like, banishing the 10 is not always the best, especially in a build like this where I'm playing a playset of Thrust, and as a result I'm playing a little bit of a package of normal spells that you might like to search here with them, and I think especially if I'm doing this, then Desires is not the way to go. But I kind of even question how good Thrust is in this deck, because, like, what am I going to set as far as trap cards go? Imperm? Like, Big Bang is not something I'm looking to set, so I don't know. It's just interesting how the deck is still so relatively unsolved relative to other decks in the meta, right? Especially ones that have been around about as long as Kashtira has now. It's just, I don't know. It's in an interesting spot. It's in a balanced spot, honestly, because, like, sometimes I want to call this the worst tier 1 deck of the meta. Sometimes I'm inclined to think maybe it's the best tier 2 deck of the meta. And as other decks get support, like Mathmech getting support coming up in the future, I don't even know if this is going to remain a tier 1 deck, honestly, or even the best tier 2 deck. It might even be a mid-level tier 2 deck, who knows. But I think the unpredictability of Kashtira overall is a relatively good sign. It might seem annoying because it's hard to know whether you should prepare for this deck or not, what kind of build this deck will be on. If you're going to play this deck, it can be difficult to know, like, exactly how good it is in, like, this particular meta. If it's good to take to a tournament or not. Is it the individual pilots who are underperforming? Is it the deck overall that's underperforming? Is the deck even underperforming? Is this actually where it's at? Only time will be able to tell ultimately. But in any case, As far as the extra deck goes too, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. There are a couple of additions if I were a more dedicated Kashtira deck that I would like to try. The third Arise-Heart is not a bad idea, because then we can like banish one off of, not Desires, but Prosperity, and then also have one to make for initial combo line and a third one for potential backup play in longer games. Of course, it also helps against opposing unicorns to have even more copies of Arise-Heart. Not that you need a third by any means. You can definitely get away with only two, but I didn't want to craft a third one just for a deck that I'm not going to be maining. Same with the Dracosack. Dracosack is a UR that I think is a great addition to this extra deck, but again, not really going to be maining Kashtira, so I didn't want to craft it overall. And yeah, I think the only other comment I have to make about the build is, again, touching on Desires versus, like, Thrust and its very specific targets. I think that the best way to move forward with this list would be to cut at least one Desires, but I'd probably just cut all three and try to find maybe some other way to boost consistency, because I was just not impressed with Desires overall. But anyway, that's the list and kind of the summary of where I feel Kashtira is at right now. Again, a lot of people are probably going to disagree. A lot of people really just don't like playing against Arise-Heart and or just other Kashtira cards, and will probably take issue with me saying the deck is mostly balanced and fine where it is, but I don't think that makes it any less true. I think the deck is mostly balanced and fine where it is. So let's break this list down card by card, and then we'll see some games. For our build here, we are on 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and a Joyous Spring, 3 Planet Pathfinder, 3 Kashtira Riseheart, 2 Kashtira Fenrir. We got 3 Kashtira Unicorn, 1 Scareclaw Kashtira, 1 Harpie's Feather Duster, 3 Pot of Desires, 1 Herald of the Abyss, 1 Triple Tactics Talent, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 3 Kashtiratheosis, 3 Triple Tactics Thrust, 1 Pressured Planet Wraitsoth, 3 Kashtira Birth, 1 Crossout Designator, 3 Infinite Impermanence, and then 1 Kashtira Big Bang. And that will do it for our main deck. Now for the extra deck, we are on 1 Baronne de Fleur, 2 number 11 Big Eye, 1 Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, 2 Dark Armed the Dragon of Annihilation, 3 Kashtira Shangri-Ira, 1 Expertly Happiness, 2 Kashtira Arise-Heart, 1 Divine Arsenal, AA-ZEUS Sky Thunder, 1 Infinitrack Goliath, and then 1 Donner Dagger for hire. So there is our list. Let's see some gameplay now. Okay, our first game is going to be against Mathmech. They are on the Microcoder package as well as Sakitama's. Looks like they were also teching both a Kaiju and Herald of the Abyss for Pearlies. Mostly. And other stuff too, of course. But anyway. Going to be starting off with a Unicorn here. Unicorn is going to go ahead and grab the Theosis. Going to activate our Theosis on the Unicorn for Fenrir. This is going to be a pretty standard turn 1 combo that we're seeing here as Fenrir grabs Riseheart. We're going to overlay the Unicorn and the Fenrir then into our Shangri-Ira. Going to put that in the extra monster zone. We're then going to special Riseheart and activate the effect. This will proc the effect of both the Ira on our field as well as the Big Bang that we banished. The Ira gets to block one of our opponent's main monster zones, and the Big Bang will be adding and then specialing the Fenrir. Now we get to activate Birth because we have that in hand, and of course we're going to use our Riseheart to go into the Arise-Heart. No need to normal summon either the Unicorn or Scareclaw Kashtira, or special the Scareclaw Kashtira here. If I need it on the field, I can summon it during my opponent's turn. Looks like they are going to have the Gamma Seal for the Ira, which will free up their zones, but of course the Riseheart is still threatening to banish a lot of things, and I ultimately decided to throw out the Scareclaw Kashtira here as well by banishing the Theosis. The main reason that I did that here is because that procs the Arise-Heart, and that gives the Arise-Heart an extra material. So I wanted my Arise-Heart to have 3 materials here before my opponent was able to make any further plays. Now that the Ira is gone, you know, that they might have needed to do that. I was actually a little bit surprised that they did take the Ira and not the Arise-Heart with the Gamma Seal, but it will probably just depend on what their plays are here. So they activate Small World and then just immediately concede. I was actually debating if I wanted to Ash Blossom it or not, but I ultimately decided not to. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense to them being on a Mathmech deck. It's just not really possible for them to play through a Riseheart that easily. So But like I said earlier, I am a little surprised that they opted to Kaiju the Arise-Heart and not, or the Era and not the Arise-Heart. Because, I mean, to be fair, the Era does threaten to block more zones if the Fenrir and the Unicorn end up proccing. But in any case, I wanted to start with this game just in case somebody was watching this video, new to Kashtira, wanted to know what a turn 1 board for the deck looked like. That's a very standard turn 1 combo line there. So, and now that we have this kind of standard-ish game out of the way, let's go ahead and see some more nuanced duels. Alright, our next opponent is on like a punk version of like a Tomahawk Auroradon deck. I'm kind of confused because they don't really have very many level 7 monsters at all in their deck. So I don't really know how consistently they're going for the Tomahawk line. But in any case, we get to once again take the first move. And I'm going to start with the Kashtira Unicorn. But this time we are going to get disrupted by the Infinite Impermanence. So I'm not going to have nearly as easy of a time setting up as we did last time. In fact, I'm not really going to have much of a time at all. What I'm going to do here is normal summon the Ash Blossom in an attempt to go for the, the Baronne de Fleur and establish an Omni Negate. Could also, well, the plan was to use the Birth and bring back the Unicorn, having the Omni up as well as the extra deck banish. But here my opponent is going to throw out the Maxx in response to the normal summoned Ash Blossom to try to get some amount of draws in. This will also proc the Unicorn effect though, so... Oh no, I'm sorry, it won't because I got Imperms. JK. Now, for some reason, I thought the Ash Blossom the Unicorn as well, although, of course, that wouldn't make any sense. So, I do get to thrust here. I'll set up an Imperm and then pass. So, my opponent ultimately is going to have net -1, but by doing so, they do reduce me to much less of a board than I normally would have made. However, I do still have an Omni and a Monster Effect negate. So, 2 negates going into 5 cards. I'm actually feeling reasonably good about that. Alright, they're going to no punk Ogre Dance. I will allow that to resolve as they go to add the Zeamine. Normal summoning the Wagon and activating. I am actually going to Imperm that here. That might seem a bit odd, right? It might seem like the Zeamine is a much more higher impact effect, and therefore, if I'm going to use my Monster Effect Negate, shouldn't I use it for that? Well, here's my reasoning here, right? My opponent has just used their normal summon on the Wagon. They obviously want to add the Field Spell, and if they do end up adding the Field Spell, they not only get to activate it to banish Ogre and then special that Zeamine they added, but they'll also get to draw multiple cards over the course of the turn, namely off of the, the Zeamine effect, right? They'll get to draw at least one and then likely another card later in the turn as well. So, plus, if they have a follow-up here, then I do get to use the Baron. Now, using the Imperm will allow them to draw a card off the Wagon, but I think that's fine, because they've still used their normal summon, and they're not guaranteed to have follow-up, which they don't here. And again, even if they do have like a Foxy Tune or something, I can just use the Baron effect. So, getting my third thrust here, definitely not ideal at all, but I'll get to birth back the Unicorn and activate the effect. Ash Blossom is going to negate the Unicorn Search, but again, we have 2 of our 3 thrusts in our hand, and the third one we've already used, so, you know. We definitely get to just go ahead and use the thrust to get the Theosis anyway. Also using the Unicorn to banish a Rising Harp from my opponent's extra deck. Yeah, when I saw their extra deck at this point, I saw the whole Auroradon package, but I was looking at it and I thought to myself, you know, my opponent clearly doesn't really have that many 7s they can special, because they didn't do so last turn, and they definitely would have if they could have. And I know they have a Zeamine, so if they're going to be going for a punk line, I'll definitely go ahead and take out the Rising Harp. And even if my opponent lives through this turn, I can still threaten to Unicorn on the next turn, and I'm just going to threaten even more of their punk lines from there. But if they do have the ability to suddenly make the Auroradon line, I can just take out the Auroradon that way as well. And I will, like I said earlier, thrust for the Theosis that the Unicorn got, the Unicorn was going to get, but the Ash Blossom negated, and my opponent is going to concede in direct response to that, which makes sense because it's not hard at all for me to find enough resources to go into enough damage for lethal here. So that'll go ahead and do it for our second duel. Let's go into the next one. So this time we find ourselves against a 60-card zombie pile, but not just any kind of a zombie pile. This is actually particularly a Skull Servant deck, so I couldn't not show this one. I mean, come on. Alright, we're going to be taking the first move, opening with Fenrir, Desires, and Birth. Definitely not too bad. Going to start with the Fenrir and activate the effect, but the opponent has a Gamma for us. I wanted to Fenrir and get my search off. Basically, Fenrir plus Birth is a combo line. So I could have made all my plays and then Desires, which was my plan here, right? So we're going to Desires to ultimately find the Maxi and the Prosperity. Definitely not great draws at all. We didn't lose anything too important. Well, we lost the field spell, actually. That is going to, I think, come up if I recall correctly. As well as the Scareclaw Kashtira. Those are definitely worth noting, but not too much else otherwise. Alright. Draw phase, I'm definitely going to fire off Maxi here. Especially because my opponent's on a 60-card deck. Looks like they're going to begin with the Danger Tsukunoko, ends up discarding itself, which will special itself. Normal summoning the Unizombie. I'm going to go ahead and imperm this, because I know for any zombie deck, Unizombie tends to be one of the more important cards. So we'll go ahead and stop that here. Just making them have the line in their hand, right? But they do still get to sink for 6, meaning they get to go for the Immortal Dragon, which will allow them to still send from the deck to the graveyard. Looks like the White Baking is going to send itself to add White Prince and White Mare. And sending the White Prince. White Prince effect will now resolve. Sending Lady in White as well as, I think, a Vanilla Skull Servant. King of Skull Servants now bring itself back. And look at these Maxi draws. They're just abysmal. Oh my god. Alright, we're sinking for a level 8. That's going to be the Skeletal Dragon Felgrand before moving to battle phase. Thankfully, the opponent is not able to lethal us here, but unfortunately for me, drawing up to all 3 of our birth here was definitely not great either. Ash Blossom right on time. Now here, yeah, I didn't check my Desires banishes. That was just 100% a misplay on my part, and I alluded to earlier, but because I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I'll Pathfinder for the field spell, and even if they have, like, a Veiler or something, I can always just sack it anyway and summon the Fenrir next. But oops, no. No, because we don't have a target, we can't actually tribute this at all. And it's so, like, I'm so kicking myself, because I really could have just checked my banish and had noticed it there. But I'll still use the Herald to get rid of the Felgrand, and I just still get to summon a Fenrir anyway, so it's not like we're just completely screwed here, right? Alright, gonna Fenrir for the Arise-Heart. Yes, I want to do that before I Prosperity. Although I'm revealing the other 2 Arise-Heart here kind of makes you think I should have just Prosperity first. But that's fine, we get to find Theosis instead. So, Theosis will pull the Unicorn. Now I get to go for the Era here, I believe. Yes, going for the Era. Specialing the Arise-Heart and activating the effect to banish the Big Bang. Big Bang will allow me to pull off a material from the Era, and now I can Era effect, which will allow me to go into Arise-Heart off of only 1 material. But I believe it is here as Arise-Heart hits the board. No, okay. I thought we got hit with a Nibiru here, actually. Oh, I remember how this game ends. Yeah, so the opponent has a Vampire Fraulein for us here, and not only did I not check my banish pile for the field spell, but I also did a classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Player move here, just did not read the effect of the vampire. As I go to attack it, my opponent is able to pay 3k to increase its defense by 3k, which is enough for me to lethal myself running into it in defense mode here. So, that was pretty brutal, honestly. Yeah, just not reading, not checking, not reading. Goes to show why, you know, you think you have a matchup in the bag, right? Kashtira versus Skull Servant, but by not reading your cards, you just ensure that you are not having that duel as much in the bag as you thought. But anyway, we got one more duel here. Let's go ahead and check that out. And our final game for this video is going to be a mirror match. So we're going to end up facing off against another Kashtira deck for our final opponent here. Alright, we're going second this time around. We do open the Ash Blossom, but... and also the Feather Duster as well, actually. I was going to say, not a lot of other disruption, but we did get the Feather Duster. So, you'll notice I did not Ash Blossom my opponent's Unicorn. I prefer to use Ash Blossom on either Theosis or Ira. But here it looks like our opponent is not going to need to Theosis in order to go for a full combo line, as they are establishing the Ira and then activating the Arise-Heart effect afterward, which allows them to go into the one material Arise-Heart there. But again, this is fine. Like I said, I don't mind using the Ash Blossom on the Ira whatsoever, so. Also, what are they banished with the Arise-Heart? I think it was the, okay, they banished our Ash Blossom, Arise-Heart, and Herald. What are they banished from their deck? Ogre? It's like, that's fine. I was a little surprised it wasn't the Big Bang, but I guess they just figured they could probably summon... I don't know what they figured here, actually. I don't know why you would prioritize Ogre over Fenrir or Unicorn. Oh, it's because of the... Maybe because of the prep here? Who knows? But anyway. Like I said, I'm going to Ash Blossom the Ira here. And I do have the Imperm, but we obviously want to use the Feather Duster first because the prep is on the field. And yeah, they can activate Ogre here, that's fine. Like, I don't think I've ever had a matchup where Ogre has been, like, super decisive as far as what it banishes. Well, that's not necessarily true. I have had games where they're able to put me off of good draws because Ogre will show you the cards in order and also does not change the order of the excavated cards, so you can get some information that way, but it's very rare for that situation to come up, and, like, I feel like when it does, you're probably already ahead anyway, so. But here I can use the Feather Duster to just wipe my opponent's back rows. I believe they had, yeah, Impermanent Call By, as well as their Kashtira cards. I go to Thrust here, but they're going to use the Ash Blossom, which is fine. I actually should have used Desires and had that get ashed instead. It would have been a lot more safe to do it the other way, because then I could take the Arise-Heart and then Theosis on it, but as long as we can get, like, a Kashtira monster we can summon, right? And here I was going to use Imperm on the Ira, but then I realized I actually don't need that many zones free. Especially because I can just go into Arise-Heart off of one Kashtira monster. Because my opponent has already activated the Ira's effect. And yeah, now the Arise-Heart can't spin. And I don't even have to use my Theosis here. My opponent already knows that, like I said, I can use this one Scareclaw by itself to go into Arise-Heart. Although that doesn't really find me lethal or anything. Wait, did they know I had Theosis, actually? I don't think they did. And I think given that they didn't know that, that was a very early concede. But, I guess to be fair, I can just battle the Scareclaw into the... But that still doesn't necessarily guarantee me plays. I don't know, I think that was an early concede overall for my opponent. But, yeah, in any case, that's going to go ahead and do it for these games. Hope you all enjoyed them. We now got a lot of the bigger Tier 1 decks kind of out of the way, so to speak, as far as deck profiles goes. So we're going to be playing some more wacky, fun stuff moving forward, starting with the very next deck profile, which I'm very excited to show off. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this video, so let us now move to our outro. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching it all the way to the very end. That means a whole lot to me, and it's also a fantastic way to support the channel. And if you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways besides YouTube, there are plenty of ways to do that. If you check out the description below, you'll find a bunch of links down there. One of them goes to my Patreon. You're actually seeing the names of everyone subscribed to the Patreon on the screen right now. So if you're interested in getting your name in the credits here at the end, if you want to see more daily Master Duel content, or if you're interested in one-on-one private coaching sessions, I offer all of that on Patreon. I also stream live on Twitch. Feel free to go ahead and click that link and follow and or subscribe there. I also have the Discord community, if you want to follow that link, where hundreds of duelists have already signed up. Free to join, and you can just come hang out, talk about the game, and chill in general. Final link that's going to be in the description is my Twitter. You can follow that if you want some more notifications of what's happening with the channel. So, all in all, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.